Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech and Future Tech Health podcasts. I have Dr. Myrav Cohen-Zion. She's a PhD in clinical psychology. She's the Chief Science Officer at DAYZZ, D-A-Y-Z-Z, and the website is dayzz.com. And we're going to be talking about sleep, but we're not going to put people to sleep. It'll be really interesting. So, Myrav, how you doing today?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Good. If I've slept well, I'm good. If I haven't, then the whole day is difficult. So, what we're talking about is super important, and it affects, I would bet like 1 billion people at least if you average it out on a daily basis, maybe more. Who knows? What do you think?
I think sleep pretty much affects everyone. Whether you sleep well or you sleep poorly, we all need sleep to, first of all, to survive. Human beings need sleep, but also almost for every daily function, from our health to our mind to our performance. It's a requirement.
What if there's 7.5 billion people in the world? What's your estimate if people have a bad night's sleep on average? I don't know. Let's say once a week. That means over 1 billion people have sleep problems. If you look at it, every night. But do you know the numbers? Do you know what percentage of people on average have problems with their sleep and how often?
Well, the ranges vary. They also vary by country, and we can separate it by people who suffer from sleep loss. So they don't actually have a sleep problem. They're just not getting enough sleep, often because, our daily lives tend to be very intense. And unfortunately, sleep often loses out in relation to other things like home and family and work and other extracurricular activities. So as far as sleep deprivation, it's considered today an epidemic. Numbers range over, depending on the country, again, over 60-70% of people regularly don't get enough sleep. There's also clear numbers showing that these losses are across the age spectrum, from the youngest children to the older adults. Everyone is suffering, with probably the most at-risk population being teens and young adults, who seem to be getting the least amount of sleep for all the age in relation to their needs, so in relation to their sleep needs.
How much sleep do people need? If you can start with a young age group, 0 to X and then X to Y. How much sleep do people need at various ages?
Sure. So, infants that just come into this world can range to upwards of 17 to 20 hours of sleep every day, so every 24-hour day. There is a range. It's not always exactly the same for every infant, but of course, the range is very high. It's like 18 to 20, 21 hours. As we age and across childhood, sleep increases. So you can go down, by the time they're 3 or 4 to about 12 hours a night. By the time they're teenagers, it's in the range of 9 hours a night. That's still a lot. I mean, most teenagers are not getting 9 hours a night, if you think about it. By the time we're adults, okay, so we're young adults, probably get to more our basal needs. So that's what we each individually need. And there's probably a range somewhere between 6.5 to 8 hours is probably the average need. But of course, there's also people on the spectrum that are more extreme. We call them short sleepers or long sleepers, who may need more like 5 or 10 hours of sleep, respectively. I always say to people, rather than focusing on this kind of golden number that everybody tries to locate, to figure out what is that number, I always think you want to kind of more aware of your. So how many hours do I need to really wake up, feel refreshed in the morning, being able to concentrate, be in a good mood most of the day? That is that number that we should um, trying to understand for ourselves.
Yeah, it makes sense. I know everyone claims to be able to, they're proud when they can say, oh, I only get 4 hours of sleep a night, which is sad, for instance. And I know people need, I guess a safe average for adults is what, 7 to 9?
Exactly. So I would start at a good 7.5 and then check if that's a little over or a little under. But that badge of honor we wear because we can survive on 4 hours, first of all, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to just survive. I want to live well. I want to feel healthy. I want to feel energized. I want to be in a good mood. I want to be able to focus on my work. This kind of I don't need phenomenon that we've seen in the modern world in the last couple of decades. First of all, it's I think not conducive to a healthy lifestyle. But we've also seen that this kind of sleep deprivation tendency has been correlated with in multiple studies, international studies, with significant health problems from metabolic disorders, diabetes and high blood pressure, to obesity, to even severe conditions like cancer and other health conditions. So it's not just about feeling well, which I think is very important on a daily basis, but it really is the foundation of our health. And it's kind of quiet. Nobody really notices how much we sleep. Human beings can, for some part, not completely, but really cut down on sleep and force awake a lot of their day, but they do not see the negative consequences of that. Sometimes people will say to me, I didn't sleep well a few days and I caught a virus. And I'm like, that's true. There's been even studies that show that people who sleep less are much more susceptible to the common cold. So it's anywhere from that to chronic sleep loss being able to affect really much more significant health factors. In my eyes, it's a real risk, a real shame. So,
all right. Well, one more question, then I want to, get into Dayzz itself. What about larks versus night owls? Have you seen any literature that talks about the health effects of being one or the other? Let's say I go to bed at like 10 o'clock at night, I get up at 6, versus someone else that goes to bed at like 3 a.m. and gets up at 11 a.m. or something. They both get enough hours of sleep, let's say, but they just sleep different times.
Exactly. So, right. So we have the larks, which are kind of morning people. They tend to go to bed earlier because they're sleepy earlier, and then they wake up earlier. And the night owls that are more night people, and they feel sleepy later in the day. And then, of course, complementary to that, they wake up later. And you're right. As long as they each get their needed amount of hours, let's just say 8 hours, if each person, whether they're a morning or a night person, gets their 8 hours based on their own internal schedule, right? So the lark may sleep from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. and the night owl from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. But they're both getting their needed amount. They're perfectly healthy. So when you get sleep, or ideal sleep is let me say it otherwise. When you get your sleep, it's ideal to get it based on your natural circadian rhythm or natural 24-hour rhythm. So it is the right way to do it, and they're both healthy. The problem is, and the problem is actually worse for the night owls than it is for the larks, and that is that our modern world is really more tailored for the morning person. Kids go to school early, so we have to get them going. Work often, starts shortly around that time too, and then ends in the early or late afternoon, and then we have the evening and time to go to bed, and you get a 7 or 8 hour cycle before you have to wake up again early in the morning to get it all going. So for larks, that actually fits pretty nicely, but for the night owls, that's pretty tough because some of them physiologically can't fall asleep before 1 or 2 a.m. For some people, even later, and they're still required to get up on time, whether it be for school. Many teens are night owls. That's a common developmental process they go through. But then what happens is they can't sleep in on their morning hours, and they continue until 9 or 10 a.m. So they are probably a more sleep-deprived population, which is a real shame again. So even though they're both healthy, the night owls tend to suffer from more sleep deprivation than the lark.
Yeah, I've actually one more question in this regard, as you're a scientist of sleep. You know how people will say, "Oh, cortisol peaks at 4 a.m. and this hormone peaks at these times," and et cetera. Does that change if someone sleeps at different hours, or is it still the same? So if I go to bed at 4 in the morning and get up at noon every day, am I going to bed at a time when, for instance, my cortisol is lowest just because it's 4 a.m., or does that change when my hours change?
I'll try to. That's kind of a more complicated process, but in general, the what you just mentioned, these are other hormones or chemicals that are also secreted based on a 24-hour rhythm, and they are synchronous to a lot of different 24-hour rhythms in our body. For example, melatonin, which is known as the sleep hormone, body temperature, and of course the sleep-wake cycle. Normally, typically, these rhythms are relatively stable, depending on some behavioral factors or external factors. They can be somewhat altered, and it depends on the hormone or the chemical. I can tell you that, for example, melatonin, which is a sleep hormone, can be very much affected by the amount of bright light we get, or our behavior or exercise patterns, and even eating patterns. So it may shift the secretion of melatonin, not by a lot, move it a little bit, but it's not going to move it tremendously, because those rhythms are, or at least for melatonin, are relatively hardwired. But I'll give you just one exception. If I were to fly today from Israel to the United States, New York, and had to, of course, adjust to a 7-hour or less jet lag, over that week, my melatonin secretion will adjust to the local time zone in New York. That is because I will be exposed to the light-dark cycle at different times, obviously, than Israel. And as a result, my melatonin secretion will move to fit the light-dark cycle in New York. It takes time, but it's definitely possible. But if you're in the same location and not getting too much external influences, it won't move very much. It might move a little.
Okay, very good. Well, let's get into Dayzz. Sorry for the long preamble on sleep, but I figured since I got to ask. Tell me about the premise of Dayzz. Yeah, what's the purpose of the company? What are you guys working on?
Okay, so first of all, Dayzz is a mobile app. It provides personalized sleep training program, which is based on big data analysis. The idea for Dayzz is that we can track sleep from multiple sources, whether they be more objective sources from, for example, wearable devices, to subjective sources. So we ask our user how they're sleeping and when they're sleeping, to other forms of tracking like mobile use. We can get a very good sense based on the sleep information and questions about their sleep on a range of sleep problems or disorders that people deal with. And I'll explain why we even started this company or this project. Sleep disorders is a really widespread phenomenon. And include with that also the presence of what we call insufficient sleep syndrome, which is, as I said, a large proportion of the modern world. And unfortunately, there is a lack of assessment and a lack of treatment of sleep disorders from various reasons, including lack of people professionals who specialize in sleep, who can do assessments, high cost of trying to get an assessment, and often time and effort and burden on the patient or on the person to try and find the right treatment, and of course investing in that treatment. And I'm not just talking about a financial investment, but time and resources. So the concept was that we were trying to figure out, all right, how can we assess for these problems in the general public, and can we get a sense of how many people and accurately and very well validate our algorithm to try and assess sleep problems in the general population, which is exactly what we're doing right now in two clinical trials, one here in Israel and one in the United States at a very well-known medical research institution, where we're trying to validate our algorithm of just trying to map out what are the problems and the main problems we're suffering from in regard to their sleep, and how good are we at detecting those problems from in a long-distance fashion, in a digital fashion. Second component of the app is, once we're good at that, is to try and fit a specific training program for this user and their specific issue. Like you said before, these sleep issues can range from people being night people and having a hard time adjusting to a morning schedule. These people can be suffering from sleep apnea and are having a hard time adjusting to what is called a CPAP machine, which some people may have heard of, helps with their breathing at night, while other people suffer from insomnia and a range of other conditions that there are very good behavioral means of supporting and helping them get the sleep they need.
So what's an example of a person? What problem, what happened when they used the app, and what kind of solution was recommended, and what did they do, and then what happened? Can you take me on an example case of the past?
Right. So maybe I'll try and give an example of a person that is suffering from insomnia. There are several well-known techniques to help people that suffer from insomnia. Insomnia is basically the inability to initiate sleep or maintain sleep for duration of a night. So they may suffer from things like taking an hour or 2 hours to fall asleep. They may wake up in the middle of the night and then spend an extended period of time alert and awake, and often very tense about or at times fearful of their inability to fall back asleep. And there have been very good studies, very good research into a technique therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which in essence provides people with changes in their behavior and their lifestyle, which has been found to be extremely effective in helping insomniacs fall asleep faster and keep consecutive and high quality. What we've done is we've taken that treatment and digitized it, and we're able to give people those same skills, those highly validated, well-evidenced skills, via the mobile app. I'm a clinical psychologist. My private clinic, that's what I do. People come and see me, and I provide treatment for people suffering from insomnia. And the added benefit I find of the digital program is people can, they come and see me once a week, and they track their sleep at home during this time. But often they suffer from significant difficulties during the week that I cannot address, and they wait a whole week until I can talk with them again. The digital program or the digital app, I can track their sleep from afar every night. I can see what their problem is. I can see what their difficulties are. I can see when they're trying too hard, or when they're not capable, or when they're making quote-unquote mistakes with the training program. For example, one of the training techniques called keeping your time in bed, where I tell people to spend a little bit less time in bed that night, and often that's a very hard task. The digital program allows them to track and help them with their difficulties, motivational issues, reading tasks. In essence, we guide them through the program and monitor their sleep for the duration of that time. And that's just one benefit that the digital treatment has over the additional benefits.
So what are some? Do you have any specific examples of what do people do? They don't even know that it's negatively affecting their sleep. Like you said, how do you know they're trying too hard? How do you know that they're having problems? How do you diagnose what's going on with their sleep? What are some examples you've seen and fixed?
Yeah, I'll give you. First of all, we give a very thorough assessment. So we can tell what their sleep problems are. In addition, the information that every day the app tracks their susceptibility. Some of the things that we can tell is when they're lying in bed for an extended period of time and unable to fall asleep. That's what I kind of call trying too hard to fall asleep. When you're sitting there an hour, 2 hours, really trying to fall asleep and are unable to do that, it can be very frustrating and kind of hard to explain maybe sometimes for people who don't have sleep problems. But when you don't have a sleep problem, you go to bed, you shut your eyes, usually relatively fast, you fall asleep. But people with insomnia will lie there for hours trying really, really hard to fall asleep. But it's kind of interesting because normally people don't need help fall asleep. It's a natural phenomenon, and what actually makes us in the end fall asleep is our brain. That actually those sensors in the brain that regulate sleep turn on and turn off wake. I'm saying this in a very simplistic manner. But insomniacs try really hard to fall asleep. They stay there and they try to meditate. Some of them take sleeping pills. Some of them spend so much time in bed just trying to get to that point. And the more they try, often the more sleep eludes them. So we teach them different techniques rather than lying in bed and trying to fall asleep, often to get out, to release that state, to do relaxation exercise, to go to bed late at night, and what to do when you can't fall asleep. These techniques together, whether they be the behavioral technique or the relaxation technique, and at times even education and information about how to deal with fear and scary thoughts at night about not being able to fall asleep, all those elements together help people fall asleep. And we provide the elements based on this kind of individual algorithm. So a person who doesn't have any concerns or fears about not falling asleep may not get those modules that require him to think or her to think about their sleep issues, whereas other people who have those issues will get those tasks of trying to work out their fears around.
So, okay, all right. So, how do people find Dayzz? How do they interact with it? And what are some other paths, some other problems and particular experiences that people could have with Dayzz that you've observed?
Again, first of all, as far as getting the app, that they can pretty much download it from the mobile app stores on the different phones. Once you download it, just open up. It asks you some basic, demographic information, and of course, you go into our sleep assessment and answer our algorithm questions to try and identify the sleep problem. Really very user-friendly, and usually you can get through the assessment within a few minutes. And immediately the training program begins, and of course sleep tracking also begins. I'm sorry, I forgot your second question.
Yeah, no, that's how they get Dayzz. But what are some typical ways that you see people interact with it? Do you set your phone by your bed and you sleep for 3 nights and it records data? Like, how do people literally use it?
Right. So it depends. If you have a wearable device, you can connect it to the app, and the app will start tracking your data from the wearable device. In addition, every morning you will get a few questions about your sleep, as well as information we collect passively via the phone. Together, we can, with all this information together, helps us estimate when you went to bed, how long it took you to fall asleep, how the quality of your sleep, how much you slept that night, and we can track. After tracking you for about 3 days, we have some smart insights into your sleep, and we start recommending even before that, but almost after 3 days, it's a little more personalized. We start recommending different modules and tasks that we think would be helpful to you. For example, if we notice, obviously this is based on information we provide, that you're drinking too much coffee, and this coffee may be affecting your sleep, we have tasks to help you to reach your technique. Or if we notice that you're a night person and you would like to get up earlier, you're not getting enough bright light or sunlight in the morning. Sleep help in realigning or helping move your rhythm to a slightly more morning type rhythm. Then we will give you tasks to help you get more bright light in the morning to help you advance your rhythm. It varies by every person and their issues. If we feel or if we notice, again, based on passive mobile behavior or based on your information that you give us, that you're spending a lot of time with gadgets at night. As you know, gadgets today, most of these smartphones and laptops and gadgets have LED screens which expose us to quite a bit of blue light or short wavelength light that greatly affects our ability to fall asleep. We will help you organize your sleep environment and your gadget use so that it has less influence, negative influence on your sleep. So we monitor your behavior and promoting behavior and behavior that may negatively affect your sleep and make recommendations, specific recommendations based on that.
How often do you get people that say, "Oh, well, it's common sense, get enough sleep, etc., and I'll be fine," versus the actual advice given from the app? Do you find that it's very powerful, or do you find that it is truly common sense, but well heated?
Sometimes it's common sense. I think for people, it's common sense at times, especially what we call sleep hygiene. But there's a difference between common sense and understanding, or realizing that you need to make lifestyle changes and actually making those lifestyle changes, and most importantly, maintaining. Maybe I can give an analogy. A lot of people know they should be losing weight, or they feel that if they lose weight, they will be healthier. But between that understanding and the ability to change our diet and eat a more healthy diet are two very different things. The benefit of the app is to guide you, support you, motivate you in the sleep-related lifestyle changes. Some of them are common sense, but not all of them. Many people don't know when they should be exposing themselves to light. Many people don't know the effects of alcohol on their sleep and how much or how little they should be drinking in relation to when they go to sleep. Often people don't know when they're not getting enough sleep or don't know the means of extending their time in bed and being able to regularly get more sleep. I think the need for change, most of us are aware of. The ability to make the change and persist is much harder.
Well, very good. So, what's the best way for people to get in touch and to get the app and to start using it?
The apps currently are in pretty much all the mobile app stores, depending on your phone. Definitely go ahead. You can download it and start answering the sleep assessment and get going.
Okay, very good. And last question: what's in store for Dayzz over the next year? What's your roadmap look like?
We are developing at this time the different treatment components of the app. So there's a range of sleep conditions out there, and we are working diligently at providing the specific treatment program for each condition. So, for example, some of the things that we have now or working on now are the insomnia conditions, the sleep apnea conditions, or snoring. We're working very hard on our delayed sleep phase that you mentioned before. That's the night owl. And we are constantly progressing and providing more tasks and modules that are specific conditions or disorders. In addition, we're always working on, again, collecting as much data as we can. The more we understand about sleep, behavior, daytime performance, work productivity, the more we can provide more insights to our humans. So we are collecting information and analyzing it very diligently to try to get more insights that we can, in the end, and develop into the app, continue our program.
Well, very good. Well, Miriam, thanks for coming, and I appreciate your time on the podcast.
Thank you. It's been lovely speaking.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.